Hey everyone, my name is Yarrow and you're listening to the Daydream Rose podcast. I kind of can't believe it, but it is May, it appears, and so we are really deep in spring now and things are changing a bit, which I'm still getting used to. I went for my first walk after breaking my leg this weekend, which is such a nice way to mark the occasion and soak up some sunshine and also just be among trees, which, oh my god, I had been missing so much. There's a few trees in my neighbor's gardens that I was able to hang out with over the fence, basically. But it was just so nice to be really, really surrounded by trees for a little moment. So, yeah, this episode has been a while in the making. All of the scheduling and publishing was kind of thrown off this year, but it was so lovely to speak to Kate Husted, and I actually think this episode is just so perfect for this time of the year. So I really hope that you'll enjoy it and receive some inspiration from it as well. Kate was such a lovely and generous guest, and I really, really enjoy her work. My only updates are I'm starting the web design adventure course next week over at yarrowdigital.com. This is an evergreen course, meaning you can, in theory, take it any time, but from May 10th, we'll do a live round together that you can join if you like. And I think that's pretty much all. Yeah. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. This is one of many episodes that began with a good giggle. I'm really excited about my guest today. I'm speaking to Kate Husted, who has so much to share about plant communication, and I'm really happy that she reached out when she did because, as you might have heard, I broke my leg in the beginning of the year, and so there's more stillness in my life now, and I'm thinking about what company I keep, for example. And right now, I'm keeping company with so many beautiful house plants, and I'm thinking about how I can deepen my relationship with them. So, yeah, this episode feels really special and excited. And Kate, I'm so grateful for you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Yarrow. It's such a pleasure.
So, let's begin by seeing where you are in the world and what nature is like around you.
Oh, thank you for asking that. So I live in the southwestern corner of the state of Colorado in the US, and it's the ancestral home of the Southern Ute people, and it's the high desert here. So definitely compared to Scotland, we have a lot less rainfall and a lot less precipitation, and it's a pretty dry climate. I personally live on a ridge that's in the foothills of the San Juan Mountains, and my house is inside a forest of ponderosa pine trees. And in the lowlands below us, there's a lot of desert sagebrush, Artemisia tridentata, and a lot of rabbit brush, Chrysothamnus. And I saw some elk on the hill this morning, and the snow is covering the ground still right now. Although some spring birds have started to return, which is always such a hopeful, joyful feeling. And the ravens who we feed are nesting right now, which is always a super fun, exciting time of year. Yeah, I love where I live. It's really beautiful here. It's really rural. I'm kind of outside of a town that's outside of a town, and we're off the grid. This house that my husband built is off the grid, so we catch our rainwater for our water, and it's really beautiful. We're so lucky to live here.
That sounds incredible. Thank you so much for taking us along. I've never met elk in real life. I was just thinking about that, but what a cool animal to hang out with.
Yeah, and I love the wintertime too, because you can see their tracks everywhere, and it makes keeping track of where they are and where they've been so much easier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so cool. So I know could be a big question, but you can take this in any way you like. I would love to hear more about kind of your practice at the moment, day to day, and what pandemic life has been for you so far.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like the the bare bones and like the skeletal structure of life hasn't changed a whole lot for me and my family. We Before the pandemic ever started, I was in the habit of working mostly from home, and so is my husband. And we have a little son who wasn't in school yet, and he's still not. Um, he'll probably start kindergarten this fall. So our day to day practices and the way our lives is structured hadn't changed a whole lot. I tend to just go to town when I run a free clinic for the free herbal medicine clinic that I run. And other than that, we're kind of up here on this hill, and it feels like life before pandemic was kind of training for this. Like, um, yeah, so the day to day hasn't changed too much for us, but then at the same time, just like absolutely everybody right now, everybody is dealing with a much more activated nervous system than we were before. And all of us are being called to get creative and reimagine the ways that we can help ourselves take care of ourselves and regulate those nervous systems with all of these new limitations and not being able to hug the people we love and share laughs in person with friends. And so just like everybody else, there's this kind of whole added call for us to spend a little bit of extra energy and attention on taking care of ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing. And this is another question that could be really big, and I'm so curious about what you're gonna say. But what does plant communication mean to you right now, and maybe before, and maybe that has changed as um, yeah, as you have been navigating this past year?
Thank you. Yeah, plant communication to me means remembering that plants are beings. And for me, that means remembering. But for those who are living on the planet who have never forgotten that, who have unbroken indigenous lineages and worldviews, that's something, a piece of knowledge that has been with them the whole time. But for so many of us, and I imagine a lot of people listening, it is a remembering because that viewing of the world as full of beings with consciousness and spirit is something that was hidden from us and discouraged in us and forcibly taken from us. And so it has to be a remembering of something that our ancestors knew and lived their day to day lives knowing. And it's opening ourselves to dialogue and connection and conversation with these beings who are so full of wisdom and who are willing and able to share it with us. And when we open ourselves that way, it enriches our lives so dramatically. And with regards to this pandemic specifically, um, the pandemic, right at the very beginning, when there was so much that we didn't know yet, and I was experiencing a whole lot of anxiety and having a really hard time I had no appetite. I was feeling anxious all the time. I couldn't sleep. And I have this favorite tree who lives just down the road from me. And I went to visit it just to try and calm myself down. And that tree is the one who helped me through that really difficult time and gave me tools to help regulate my nervous system, and also was the one who gave me the idea for it. Basically told me to create this course in plant communication. And as I was sitting under it with my back against the trunk, the idea came into my head and I thought about it a little more, and the kind of basic outline and structure for the course and the fact that it would come in 4 parts and what each part would be about came into my head. And that was a gift from that grandmother tree. She's a juniper. And so my relationship really deepened with her at the beginning of the pandemic and has been continuing to grow ever since. And so I'm just so grateful to her and what plant communicate excuse me, plant communication has, um, the gifts it's given me, um, throughout this really difficult experience, and how held I've been able to feel, throughout this hard time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel, yeah, so much similar nourishment from plants, and I loved hearing you talk about your relationship and how, yeah, how that's showing up for you. Um,
Thanks.
you also mentioned that you run a free herbal clinic, and so I imagine that you have in your day-to-day life a lot of opportunity to kind of enchant other people or bring them into relationship with plants. So I would love to hear more about what that looks like and who's coming and yeah, how are you like what is a good introduction that you see that works for people?
Mm, great question. Thank you. Yeah. So the Herb Hut Free Clinic is a little nonprofit that I started in 2017. And what it looks like in real life is we have this big truck with a really unique, one of a kind camper on the back, and it's like a little wooden house. And we fill the little wooden house with herbal remedies and books and paperwork, and we drive it around. This is a rural county, so we bring it to places like soup kitchens and community centers and mobile home parks, because everything is so far apart. Transportation is a really big barrier to accessing healthcare here. And so we do as much as we can take it to places that people already are. And it's me and one other practitioner currently. I'm a clinical herbalist, and my coworker does free therapeutic massage, and she coordinates our clinics for Spanish speakers. And we see a whole lot of people who don't have access to healthcare, period. People who, for any host of reasons, don't go see the doctor. So, whether that's transportation issues or lack of health insurance or traumatic experiences in the doctor, etc., being undocumented immigrant. Um, we see a whole lot of people with chronic stress and anxiety and depression and sleep deprivation and a lot of skin issues and digestive issues and chronic pain and chronic inflammation. Um, in a typical year right now, we'd be seeing a whole lot of colds and flus and coughs. And right now I haven't seen a single one.
Yeah.
except for those of us who have COVID, in which case I'm like talking to people on the phone and dropping things off on their doorstep. But in our physical free clinics, it's like everybody's avoided the coughs this year, I think because we're all running around in masks and
Yeah.
washing our hands.
I was just thinking the same thing. I usually have one cold in winter and I didn't this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, but to speak to your question about um, introducing people to working with plants, that is the real joy of my work. It's so much fun to especially get somebody in who's never worked with herbal medicine at all and is maybe a little bit skeptical that it's going to work at all, and but they've kind of exhausted their options and they're willing to try anything. And some of those people come back so surprised, like, oh, this thing really worked. And being able to, like, just as an example, we are at our local soup kitchen every Thursday, and there's a community garden there. And during the spring and summertime, it's really fun to just be able to walk with someone in the garden and say, here's this weed that's super nutritious and that you can pick and eat, even if you're unhoused, you don't currently have a home, that you're walking around town and in the hills all day, and you can recognize this plant and add it to your diet as a way to get vitamins and nutrients. And things like that really, really light people's eyes up and inspire them. And it's so fun to help facilitate connection between humans and plants that way.
Yes, that sounds beautiful. And yeah, it's just so grounding and really creates a sense of belonging, doesn't it? To feel
Yeah.
familiar with the plants around us and to know our bioregion not just by looking at the sky and having a feeling of how the seasons change, but also of how, what kind of plants live here and love it and why. And so that's so interesting. Um,
Yeah.
you're also speaking to being a white settler in the herbal world, and I would love to hear more if you want to share about that.
Thank you for that question. Um, Being a white settler in the herbal world, I feel like I could talk about this for a very, very long time. But just to begin, as herbalists, we concern ourselves with healing, and it becomes clear really quickly in our practices that the systemic harms of inequity and oppression and exploitation and hierarchy that are so inherent and entwined with the systems of capitalism and the religious outlooks and patriarchy that come along with colonization. These systems are keeping our clients sick. And herbal medicine can't be any more than just a band-aid when somebody has no home, or they're denied access to healthcare, or they experience racism in the doctor's office, or they grow up being told that they're bad and dirty and not enough. And as a white settler herbalist, I see my role as it's necessary for me to work to unravel these systemic harms that keep us all sick, and to work to reweave our community in a way that is healing and repairing. And in order to do that, I think we need to constantly be educating ourselves about the ways that the system of whiteness and the lens of whiteness perpetuates the harms that we're working to unravel. And that shows up in a whole lot of ways in herbal medicine. And that can look like cultural appropriation. It can look like not, lack of proper attribution to the traditions and the people whose knowledge of the plants we learn and we use. It can look like over harvesting and exploitation of wild plants and the land, which is one and the same as exploiting indigenous people who are native to that land. And the lens of whiteness also shows up in all these insidious ways in the health and wellness industry. I recently heard Rachel Ricketts, who's brilliant, describe it as the wealth and hellness industry, which I thought was so brilliant.
That's incredible.
I know, I was so grateful to her because it just describes what I mean when I'm talking about the way that the popular dogma kind of perpetuates these worldviews that are hierarchical and that teach us that our worth is variable and that we need to jump through hoops and accomplish certain things in order to earn our worthiness. And the healthier we are, the worthier we are. And that a lot of times that looks like really expensive superfoods and, meditation retreats and the right yoga class. And it's incredibly exclusive and it feeds into this whole idea that is so intertwined with whiteness itself that we're inherently dirty and bad and not enough, and that we need to take extreme measures to clean ourselves and detoxify ourselves and turn ourselves into something pure and good, and that those of us who do that are somehow better than those of us who don't. And it's so incredibly harmful and it's so pervasive and baked into our thinking systems. And it's our job as white settlers to constantly be examining these things and relearning these things and not perpetuating these harms onto our clients, and working to change the systems that harm all of us.
Yeah, and that's such big work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding. More than a lifetime, unfortunately.
Yes. And I think this time, more than any other time I've experienced, is really like grounding me more in this understanding how important it is to work towards things that we might not see in our lifetime, and to not use that as an excuse to not even try, I think.
Oh, totally. Such a good point.
I wonder, like, what is your best plan friend at the moment? What are you learning in that relationship?
Gosh, this is a tough one because it's like being asked to pick your favorite song, kind of.
I know, it's so hard.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of plants that really help prop me up in my daily life and teach me constantly. The grandmother juniper that I mentioned earlier is a really big one that's coming to mind right away. And as I'm bringing her up again, it's occurring to me to just note that that I don't tend to use gendered pronouns for plants, especially when I'm talking in a more general way, or with about plants that I don't have such an intimate relationship with. But with this particular tree, through cultivating relationship, she has made it clear to me that she's a grandmother and that the way to describe her is she, and that's okay. But I just wanted to make note for listeners, I don't think all plants are she. I don't think
Mhm.
most plants are even she or he or anything. I usually, use they if I'm going to just be talking in a general way. So this is just about this particular relationship I have with this particular tree. But yeah, so grandmother juniper, and the other one who's really coming to mind, who I've been drinking in tea almost every day for a very long time, is tulsi, or holy basil, Ocimum sanctum. And that plant has taught me so much. I just had a cup of tea right before I got on this call with you, and I'm just so grateful to that being for all the many ways that they support my health and well-being. And I work with that plant a lot in my clinic. And thank you, holy basil.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful. I can feel, yeah, I can feel that. And you already touched on kind of your own practices and your day-to-day life a little bit at the moment, and you mentioned tea, which I love, and it's so simple. I think sometimes when I ask this question about people's practices, they feel like they have to share something really extravagant or complicated, and I
Mm.
actually really love the simplicity. So I wonder if there's anything else that comes to mind that feels like a really good thing to do right now that you want to share with people.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, that's been one, I think, positive outcome of the limitations of this pandemic has been watching myself and the people in my life devote, out of necessity, start to pay more attention to our practices like that, and be able to be a little bit more consistent with them. And the one, so there are a lot of things, that I could think of, but the one that I have been focusing most on lately is moving my body every day. And that doesn't have to mean like a lot of people, um, and I used to be one of them for sure, used to think that that has to mean like rigorous exercise, but the more, but I don't think that's true at all. And I think just moving my body, and in any way that feels right for the day. So sometimes I'll have a lot of energy and feel like I need to move it. And sometimes I'll be really tired, but just gently moving things around and allowing energy to get released is so grounding, and I always feel so much better afterwards without fail. Like I'm never regretting the fact that I did that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and being outside is another one, just simply being outside. And that doesn't have to look like anything in particular. It doesn't have to be a huge excursion. It doesn't have to in the middle of a big city or in the middle of a forest. All of it is helpful to just, even if it's just 5 minutes a day, it's really good perspective for me, and paying attention to my surroundings out there. This is making me think of actually about a month ago or a little more, I had this experience where it was one of those divine inspiration moments where this idea came into my head, and I opened up my notebook and kind of wrote down these super basic, simple prompts for myself to go through while I'm outside. And because it's so easy to go outside and go for a walk or something and still be just so lost in my head and way up in my thoughts and distracted and not paying attention to my surroundings. And so I recorded these prompts into a voice memo, and I started listening to it while I was outside, and it just guides me to pay attention to what I see and what I hear, and what I smell. And I have been, I turned it into a meditation basically, and I've been using that a whole lot. And it's so helpful to me. And every time I do it, I feel so much more embodied afterwards and so much better. And like my senses are really awake. And so it became clear that I should offer it to other people too, since it was helping me so much and it was something that I was using all the time. And so I turned it into this guided meditation that you can get for free. If for people who subscribe to my newsletter, everybody who subscribes can have it, and you can download it onto a phone or something that will let you listen through headphones while you're outside. And that practice has been super helpful for me lately, and I've been leaning on it really heavily.
That sounds really beautiful. I love guided meditations. I feel like this year or this past year, it's been hard to be in silence sometimes in meditation. And so I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate guidance and just like the opportunity to be invited somewhere else, listening to someone else's voice in practice and how they approach things and just dropping into that space. That's so beautiful.
Oh, I
So
totally agree. Yeah, it's so helpful to have just a structured little thing that you can hit play on.
yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And talking about sharing the plant magic, what do you wish more people knew about plants?
Oh gosh, good question. I wish that more people knew that plants are people too.
Yes.
And yeah, since the question is framed like what I wish more people knew about plants, it makes me think about speaking to the people who don't pay plants much mind in their daily lives. And for those people who might hear the term plant communication and be very immediately skeptical or not know what I mean by that, sometimes it can be helpful to talk a little bit about the science. And I just wish more people were aware of the science that is coming out these days about how incredibly wise and good communicators plants are, and the fact that they talk to each other through chemical signals passed through the air and through electrical impulses passed through root systems underground. And they warn each other about predators, and they share nutrients through root systems and create communities, even with members outside their own species. And they nourish and take care of each other. And they know the difference when a deer is nibbling on their branch or when a human breaks a branch on their way by, and they change their behavior to act accordingly. And they learn lessons over time based on their life experience. And all of this stuff is just so the beginning of what we're coming to understand about how intelligent and complex plants are and what they know about us when we're in their presence in the world. So I wish people knew more about that.
Mm. Yeah, I was just looking at my house plants as you were speaking, and I wondered
Mm,
if they're happy in pots. I feel really mixed about this because sometimes I feel like
mm,
it's so sweet and sheltered in here, and they must like the atmosphere and the candlelight, and I'm feeding them. They don't have to worry about much. But on the other hand, they can't talk to each other through their root system because they're each in their
mm.
own little pot, and I hope they don't mind, you know?
You could ask them.
Yes, yes, I could ask them, yeah.
That would be really fun to ask. I'd
Yes.
like to know the answer. Let me know what they say.
Yeah, that would be great. Gosh, Kate, thank you so much. You shared so many treasures. I feel really inspired to ask more often and listen and just be in touch and explore that some more. And yeah, thank you so much for the beautiful work that you do. I would love to know what you're currently offering and where people can find you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so the best way to stay in touch with what my offerings are, because there's always more of them coming, is to sign up for my newsletter. And you can do that at katehustedherbalist.com. So that's KATEHUSTED herbalist.com. And everybody who signs up for the newsletter gets a free meditation. And I have a couple courses on my website that are always open. You can sign up for them anytime and do them at your own pace. One is a herbal subscription where you get a herbal medicine class every month and get your questions answered in the forums there, and it's a community. And then two others that are up right now. One is my plant communication course, and the other is Herbs for Boundaries and Protection. And that's for us sensitive people, to help us have practical tools for protecting our own energy and not taking on the energy that isn't ours. Yeah, thank you so
Mm,
much, Yarrow. It's been so fun to be here.
yeah, thank you so much. Oh God, the boundaries and protection class so needed. That's so
I
good. Thank
know, right?
you. Yes, I will link to all of this
Yeah,
in the show notes as well. So in case someone didn't catch that, they can check it out there. And again,
thank
Kate, thank
you.
you so much. This has been really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to meet you and talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.